Hello and welcome to Be Indie Now, a podcast about independent game development. I'm your host, Tobiah Marks, and with me today is the team made Suddenly Words, a word puzzle game, I guess you would call it, starting with...
Hi, I'm Alec Reeves.
I'm Rebecca Williams.
Ian McLeish.
Taryn Liu.
So do you guys have like a team name?
We are Team Oceanic Bears.
Oceanic Bears, cool. So did you guys form that for your class, or is that a team that you had before?
Well, the name kind of came up as just an inside joke in our senior game design course, just from different names that have been passed around, different ideas that people pitched but ended up getting red lit.
There was a game called Suddenly Bears, and we kind of played on that.
I've been the Oculus Rift guy for most of the class, and so I had an Oculus Rift game, and so lots of things came up between bears and bears wearing Oculus Rifts and bears in the ocean, and one thing led to another.
If you notice in the credit screen, we actually have a bear wearing an Oculus Rift. So
that is kind of a cool
actually
logo.
It's a scuba goggles.
Or sorry,
an Oceanic Bear.
But yeah, looks like an Oceanic Rift bear.
Cool. So you guys went to UC or go to UCSC.
Mm-hmm.
What levels are you guys? Seniors?
Oh, we're all seniors.
Yeah, we're seniors.
So you guys took a class. What was the class called?
It was 179 Game Practicum. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that.
Yeah.
It was pretty much developing for Windows 8 and the Surface RT.
Cool. And so that's where you guys formed, where you guys started this group.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what's the process of that? Like, what did you guys do first few days of class?
Let's see. I actually knew Alec from our senior game project, which we're still working on right now. So during the first couple of weeks, we all had to pitch ideas for a game for the Surface, and I talked with Alec initially, and he liked the idea that we had, and so
It was better than my idea.
Then we joined in with Rebecca and Ian.
So what was the idea? Tell me about it.
So initially, actually on the very first day of class, an idea popped into my head about falling letter tiles, and it actually was pretty close to what we ended up making. I don't remember what exactly inspired it initially. I mean, obviously, I was thinking about Tetris and Boggle at the time. The way that the game works is that falling letter tiles land on a 3D board, and you have to swipe the tiles around into a configuration so that you can make words, which destroys the tiles and gets you points.
You could say that you suddenly get words.
Yeah. Yeah, so it kind of has a Tetris elements where you're
Yes.
trying to stack everything up and make it even, but instead of
Right.
just match 4 or matching gem colors, you're having to actually form a
Build
word.
words as rules similar to like Boggle or Scrabble, and the way that you actually lose is that the tiles stack up too high, so it gets faster.
So you
as you're
got two
playing.
things going on. You're moving tiles around to not only spell the words you're trying to spell, but to keep all the tiles short, because if you get too many tiles in one stack, of course, that ends the game.
You guys big fans of word games before? You just thought like, oh, this will be easy to make.
I was a big fan of like Texas Twist or Word Twist, any of those games where you just have like a minute or a minute and a half to spell as many words as possible. Those were always a lot of fun. And like those have a lot of moving the letters around constantly to try to spell as many words. So
Yeah, I find a lot of game players are either really into those games or they're really not. Like I like words, I like reading and all that, but man, I am awful at those word games.
my favorite part is just throwing random letters together and then it's a word and you're like, oh, that's a word? And then you look it up later on and now you have something new to use.
It's really awesome because I was able to show this game to like a lot of my family who doesn't play games, and they enjoy casual games like Words with Friends. So it was really awesome to see them play and really enjoy that.
Yeah, it's really simple for any kind of person, gamer or otherwise, to get it. It's simple. You guys have this Scrabble tile look to the tiles, so they kind of understand the physicality of one stacking on top of another and moving around. And it helps that it's 3D too. Like if it's 2D gameplay, but the fact that you're a 3D game helps kind of convey how it works.
We actually had a lot of discussions related to 2D versus 3D. Initially, the initial concept was in 3D, but we were concerned that we wouldn't have enough time to work on the game because we're also working on our senior projects.
How long did you have to work on this game?
We had 10 weeks, 1 quarter.
And it was closer to 9 weeks or 8 weeks because the first 2 weeks of the quarter were just coming up with the idea. We didn't even start working until week 2 or 3.
So it was like week 2, 3, form Oceanic Bears. You get together. You two had the start of idea, and then you two joined on. Is it because like you were assigned there, or was it you picked this idea versus other ideas?
Well, it's mostly from our senior game design course that was we were taking at the same time.
Okay.
I had formed a team with Rebecca early on, but unfortunately the game we were working on didn't make it through the greenlight process, which then I ended up joining the team with Taryn. So we've all pretty much known each other from the senior game design course.
And I'd worked with Taryn on one of my prototypes earlier the previous quarter as well, so I knew him already. And
oh yeah, you guys were both on Suddenly Bears, huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So you guys knew each other. You're already comfortable with each other's skill sets. What are you guys' skill sets? Like who's in the programming? Who's in the art?
I've always been mostly programming. I've been really into like artificial intelligence lately. Pretty much any kind of general systems.
I enjoy art, so I did all the art for the game. And one of the best things was learning how to do 3D models. So I've never done 3D art before, which was great.
You've never done any 3D art before?
No.
That's really impressive.
It was great. Taryn was able to help us learn Blender through this.
Yep. I usually like focusing on, or not focusing on any one thing. So I did sound, I did some 3D modeling, I did some programming, I did camera controls. So I filled in whatever I was needed.
I'm actually a double major in computer science and art, so I have a pretty heavy background in both sides. I prefer art, and I'm more interested in 3D modeling and animation, but for Suddenly Words, I actually didn't do any art.
So who did most of the design? Did you guys kind of have a solid idea from the beginning and didn't really shift?
Taryn had a pretty solid idea from the beginning. A lot of edge cases and things had to be discussed, but it's pretty much just like we planned it out in the beginning.
We did do a lot of design work related to the way that the player interacts with the tiles. Because it's a touch device, we wanted to be able to swipe the tiles and have that feel really good. That was really important.
We wanted to keep that as simple as possible. We
Exactly.
didn't want a lot of complicated controls on the surface, like simulated like controller. Like we just wanted touch.
Right, but we also had to deal with the fact that you had to select words. So some control schemes that we had considered, like in Scramble, how you swipe to spell the words, and it actually feels really good. We had thought about that, but there are issues where we were using swiping for moving the tiles around, and we needed to find a different way to select the tiles and also account for scenarios where, say, another tile lands on top of a tile you've selected, or you're trying to build a longer, more complicated word or something like that.
Yeah, because as you're building a word, that middle letter could go away. So, like, did you find that the game, those are fairly minor gameplay tweaks. Was it pretty solid of like, this is the vision and that's, what
Pretty
it was?
much.
Yeah. So what would you say was the biggest thing that changed from the core design? Or was there just not any big change?
There weren't big changes.
Mostly just the way things were implemented, like physics, Taryn. A lot of things that we thought would be able to be handled for us, like just through Unity, like tiles falling.
So why did you have to deal with physics?
It was probably because the number of objects that were interacting with each other at once, but just that many calculations being done at once.
So first off, were you using actual physics engine in Unity, or were you just cheating physics?
Initially, we did try to use that. I did a lot of running in circles with that because it's very finicky, as physics are almost anywhere.
It's not meant for like this tile goes down and lands at this spot perfectly.
Exactly. So what we were doing required sort of pseudo-physics where, they fall realistically, but then when they hit, they don't move at all. They stack perfectly on top of each other.
The bouncing was really cool, but it would not have worked for the game. Like we're talking tiles would bounce higher than what they fell from. Like it just didn't make any sense at all.
There's all sorts of weird bugs that happen in physics.
Yeah, so
you ended up just coding your own
We ended up just faking it and coding in move this much, accelerate this
collision
much.
Detection was really funny too because tiles would fall straight through the board. Even though we had collision detection on, it wasn't calculating it at every frame, and so it just wouldn't work.
So now we just pretty much suspend the tiles in the space when they get to the right area in each stack on the board.
Yep.
So how have you guys worked with Unity before this class?
Actually, this quarter was my first time really using Unity. I was learning it for a senior project that I'm working on with Alec as well. We're still working on that project. So that helped. Having two projects that were both in Unity meant I had to learn Unity very quickly.
Yeah, good way to stack up
dividing
your homework.
focus was a little bit of a pain in the butt. But it was really easy to learn to use, but there's still so much more to learn. And there's a lot of quirks to it that we ended up discovering.
The quarter before this one, I was in the same class. We didn't get to use the Surface that time, but our choices were between ActionScript for Flash or Unity. But at this point, the 2D upgrade for Unity in 4.0 wasn't out yet. So we were like, well, if we're going to do 2D anyway, we'll just start with ActionScript. But then halfway through that quarter, the 2D patch came out, and we made our final game in that class on Unity, and it was really simple. I was able to learn it very quickly, and a lot of things were just taken care of for you, so I wanted to keep using Unity, and so I've been using it ever since.
So what other engines have you guys used besides Flash? Have you guys messed around with any other tools? Or
I've used Game Maker.
Yeah,
we tried Construct too at the beginning, but the free version didn't leave much space for having large number of triggers in the game.
Yeah, it's a little limited. It's kind of, I think, built for certain kinds of games. Like if you want to make a 2D platformer quickly, Construct 2
Oh yeah,
is a very useful
it looks like
tool.
it'd be great for prototyping.
But,
but
you know,
a
if
full game with like menus and stuff, you'd have to get the paid version to be able to do it.
Yeah, definitely, at least the paid version.
Yeah.
So you guys
I've worked with Unreal a little bit.
Okay.
I took a game engines class, so we programmed a game engine, worked with Game Maker, and Construct pretty much.
Do you think Unity was the favorite that you've used so far? Or do you
Yes.
think? Yeah.
I actually did a comparison between Unreal and Unity, and I found that Unreal would probably be great if I had like 20 people to work with on a team. But Unity is it feels like it's a lot easier to use for a smaller team or even solo game design. So that's why I ended up going with Unity.
The component-based structure makes it easy to work with everything,
Yeah,
which is
it's those
nice.
tools, right?
It's
Unreal's got a great engine. It's very
it's
detailed,
got
looks
cutting-edge
great.
technology,
But like Unity has these tools that just make it so much faster to develop with, so much easier, do so many things that it just makes so much sense for your pipeline to use it.
yeah.
Raycasting is probably my favorite thing that I've just pulled out of Unity, and it just does it so well and efficiently. It's great.
So what about problems? Like what would you say was your biggest problem you ran into with Unity?
Physics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just going over the
Physics.
dealing with the
Physics for
deal?
me. I was pretty stubborn about trying to use physics because I was like, no, this should work. I should be able to have it fall with physics, turn off physics, snap it to the spot I want.
There's
No.
also this text editor that comes with Unity called MonoDevelop that Alec and Taryn could tell you all about.
I have since integrated Visual Studio into my Unity, so when I open my editor, Visual Studio comes up. It's much better than MonoDevelop.
Yeah, Mono is the worst thing ever.
Mono is fine, but the MonoDevelop that comes with Unity is finicky.
It's just like
It's buggy.
Yeah.
Like one thing that will definitely happen is you can't minimize it sometimes, and you can't access things that are behind it. It like locks to the front of your screen, and it's weird.
Did you guys try Unity VS, which I believe adds a lot more features, integrations for Visual Studio with Unity projects? Let you use some of the more advanced
I
features.
haven't. I didn't know about that.
Hadn't heard of that.
Yeah, no, it's a separate plugin company that makes that.
Okay.
I'll have to check it out after.
I will definitely check that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, certainly.
Did you like messing with Visual Studio, or was it just like
Oh.
better than alternative kind of
The
thing?
newest Visual Studio, I got 2013 Ultimate Edition through DreamSpark, which is offered through Microsoft, I believe.
Yes.
And haha, plug. My favorite part of it is you can have a preview of your code in the scroll bar. So you can actually see where all your comment blocks are and your functions just on the scroll bar. You can peek the definition of a function, and it opens it right there in the middle of the page. It doesn't open another window. It's beautiful.
Well, cool. I'm glad you guys going through it.
Yeah, we're fans. We're
Yeah.
fans. of
I'm a
that.
fan. Yes.
So have you had much experience with working up before this class?
Experience in
What Beauty Visual Studio or?
a little bit, not the newest version, but when I was programming a lot of C++, I used Visual Studio. Just
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
So, what about your future projects? Obviously, you're going to want to use Unity again, right?
Unity probably for anything simple. There's a great deal going on right now for the new Unity engine, though, so I might want to give that a
You
try.
mean Unreal?
Oh, I'm sorry, Unreal, yes.
And there's also the new Cry engines coming out. And
Yeah, I think they're all like slashing their prices really hard because it's really hard to compete with
Yeah,
Unity's
they're seeing
free
Unity's
offering.
success.
Yeah.
Because it's like basically Unity's free. Like the stuff that they offer in the Pro version is cool and important and nice.
I don't think
but
we used any of the Pro features, but we did have
We used
access
Shadows.
to...
Yeah, but
Oh, the Shadows are Pro.
Shadows are Pro.
Okay.
Which
yeah,
is
we got
interesting, but-
our Unity Pro license through our senior course, so we used that.
I think deploying to Android might also be in the Pro version, like mobile deployment.
you used to have to pay for going to iOS and Android.
They might
But I
have changed.
think they
wanna
might have
say
made
they-
the basic versions for free, and then on
Yeah.
Windows, for Windows 8 and Windows Phone, it's free because Microsoft has a partnership with Unity.
Speaking of deploying to the Windows Surface,
Yeah.
I don't.
How'd you like developing on the Surface?
Developing on the Surface actually was pretty straightforward. I ran into one issue where when I started dealing with touch controls, the Surface does touch differently than what Unity's default touch is. And I think that's because one is Android and the other is Windows, and Windows does it a different way or something. But the Unity preview window wouldn't do the touch commands. It would only recognize mouse clicks. So if I did anything specifically as a touch input, it wouldn't work. So I'd have to deploy to the Surface every time I wanted to test something. So iteration was a little slow.
Why didn't you just have like if mouse click and touch in the code?
I ended up doing something similar to that, but I think it was just
But it was just annoying to
forgetting
have
something
to do
and-
that because like they should just be the same, right?
Yeah, I think there's plans for Unity to have Windows touch support, but I don't think that's in yet. I was able to get a really cool library that was free on the Unity Asset Store that had DLLs for all the different interfaces, and it had actually one specifically for the RT in there, and I was able to use that, and that worked.
So without you'd say the biggest problem that you faced when doing the
Yeah, the touch was definitely the biggest problem. But the thing that really bothered me is our game is suddenly words. That's suddenly space words exclamation mark. So in the build settings of Unity, before you deploy, you have all the options for like setting the pictures of what the icons are going to be, the name of the developers, publishers, all that information in there. Unity automatically filled the stuff that had to do with the game name based on the project title, which we had labeled as Suddenly Words. And the exclamation mark was fine, but it had automatically changed the space to an underscore. And when I deployed to, or when I built the project, it opens a Visual Studio project. And then you have to build the game through that, which is fine. But when I did that, it threw all the errors. Something was wrong. And I ended up tracking it down, and it was that underscore. When I went in,
because the underscore was inconsistent.
it was an inconsistent character in the
Interesting.
project. Once
And-
I changed
and-
it back to a space, everything worked fine.
But Unity automatically added that underscore saying, well, this can't be right, even though it totally could handle a space fine.
Yeah, it totally handled the space. It handled the
I was
exclamation
going to say
mark
that, like,
fine.
that seems like, spaces you have to avoid. That's like old programmer
Exactly.
mentality.
But
So
no, it
I
was-
just imagine somebody at Unity was like, oh, I'll add this handy little filter thing to make sure no one adds a space.
Yeah, once I fixed that, everying
Oh,
went
man,
pretty
it
smooth.
sounds like it was an annoying error. How long did it take you to figure that one out?
A couple hours, I think.
Okay. Oh, a couple hours, so that's about I was afraid you're going to be like, it took me a week to figure it out.
The other thing was apparently some other teams figured out how to get the project onto the Surface a different way, but the only way I knew how to do it was through the remote debugger. And that worked as long as you're on the same network, but then if you were on different networks. I had to not have my phone on during a podcast. And
yeah, okay, I messed up there.
What was I saying?
Are you talking about
Oh, right, the remote debugger.
Yeah.
I was able to figure out how to do it over the internet. And basically, you just had to. I went to what'smyip.com and was able to get my global IP address. And it actually worked through that, as long as you didn't have your firewall up.
Oh, interesting. So you could just do it over any IP network.
Yeah, I was able to do it from actually 2 different networks onto
That's pretty
onto
handy.
the Surface. It was pretty awesome.
So that was the downsides. What did you guys like about developing for Surface in particular?
The game felt really good to play once we got it onto the tablet. The controls seriously, credit to Alec. Those controls, they feel really good when you're swiping the tiles around and all of that.
Have you guys made like touch-based games before
No.
for other
No.
platforms?
Never.
No,
First one.
that was probably my favorite part, was actually doing a touch game. And the Surface, much larger than a phone, so a lot easier to deal with. Oh, how is the player going to interact with this game? Well, they're going to hold it probably with one hand, if they're right-handed or left-handed. There was actually I think a long discussion about the
Yes.
design of the placement of the buttons, whether we put those on the left, right, or center based on if a player was going to be right or left-handed.
Mm-hmm. Did you give much thought to like the desktop player too, where they might just be using a mouse and keyboard? And
Yeah,
have their
it's
Surface
actually
set
set up so you can play it on PC or Surface. Like we have multi-touch enabled for rotating the board, but on PC you only got one mouse, so the spacebar will toggle the functionality for rotating the board.
up. Oh, interesting. What about like right-click or something?
That probably would have been a better idea, but
I think right click actually, we had something where it would just bring up like the desktop menu or something when you right clicked, like properties and system options and stuff.
I'm not sure. We didn't look into that too much.
I don't think we did that, but
It's a future update, right?
oh yeah, we're
That's
planning on
definitely
a couple
possible.
of things for an update
Yeah.
soon.
So are you guys like it's past the course at this point? Are you guys going to update it, or are you guys not care?
We
about it
definitely
too
want
much?
to. We're just, we're busy with our senior project. I believe Ian has the most time out of all of us, and
Yeah, I've actually already put an update on which fixed, it was just a small display issue and then there were some issues with buttons, but I did that update over spring break and we should have another update within a week or 2.
Very cool.
we got an idea from Stefan from Microsoft that having Facebook integration on there, and a lot of times it's like, whatever, I can post to Facebook, but just the idea of being able to brag to your friends like, oh, look, I got this score, try to beat it. Because right now the only game mode we have is unlimited, like go
Yeah,
as long as you
I
can.
mean, like word games being popular on Facebook. That seems like a
What is that?
No, but that like you have a good market there of players already interested in that kind of gameplay and that kind of integration. So that seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, we're definitely looking into difficulty settings. That's actually probably one of the most important features that we want to add, because the number one bit of feedback we were getting from people was that it's too fast. It would ramp up too quickly.
Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of game designers make is making their games way too hard.
Yeah. Well, when
you
They just
play it
get
constantly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I've talked to game developers who make like really, really awesome puzzle games, and I play through their first 5 levels, and I'm like, this is impossible hard. This is like super expert mode, right? And like, that's the tutorial. And they're like, no, you've too caught up in your game. You got to make it easier. If you think it's easy, it's probably hard.
Yep.
One thing we did like, though, is when, even before we had instructions in the game, we could hand it to someone, and before we even said anything, they were kind of moving stuff around and kind of getting the idea of what the controls were. So we were really happy with how intuitive the controllers.
Yeah, you got
ended
a
up
really
being.
good balance there. I think it's a lot of that using what has been done before in terms of like, I understand Scrabble tiles, I understand shifting tiles. You didn't really have to teach what should I be doing here, right? You're not doing something way out there, really confusing. You're kind of relying on that common lexicon of mechanics, but at the same time doing something unique in a kind of word game that I personally have never seen before. So I think you hit a really good balance there. What do you plan to do on like more platforms now? I know you got it on Windows 8 and Android.
Yep.
Are you going to plan to go to other platforms?
I would like to see it on iOS.
that's definitely in the next update probably.
So how much like success have you seen since it's gone on to stores? Have people been downloading, rating it? No one knows about it yet.
A random person, I don't know who this is, but posted on the page and gave it 5 out of 5 stars and said it was the best game ever. And I was just like,
It was a AAA quality game and that Activision should hire us, and it was better than Call of Duty. Random person we'd never, ever heard of before. But we actually have 50 plus downloads right now, I think, between 50 and 100.
Most of the downloads are from people we know, but most of the feedback we've been getting has been pretty positive, with the caveat that it's very hard.
How have you been promoting the game?
Right now, mainly word of mouth.
Yeah, just like
posting on
telling your friends to go
Facebook.
download
Our
it.
professor, David Westman, posted
true.
on his Google Plus page for, well, all the games in the class. But
I think when he went to GDC, he said that he talked up the games from our class. So
yeah.
So what are your plans to market it more, or if there are any? You guys going to try and like put yourself out there? You mentioned integrating Facebook, right? Like that's a core marketing feature to get people to talk about and be interested in your game, right? When I say to go market, I don't mean do you plan to invest $10,000 into some ad buy campaign, right?
Do a $1 million Kickstarter.
Yeah, no, but there's ways that you could do to make the game spread to more people beyond your friend circle and get people talking about it.
We're currently actually in a pretty solid beta, and once we move beyond that, I think we're going to look into marketing a lot more.
I personally don't know a whole lot about marketing, but I think that if we can get exposure like this is an excellent way of at least getting people to know about the game. Even I think just basically finding more people who we can talk to who would actually be able to vouch for it and who would go and actually play it and say, this is cool, I'm going to tell other people about it. That would help a lot.
Maybe finding someone who does like reviews of mobile games on like YouTube or something, and maybe
That's true.
Send an email asking them to check out our game.
Yeah, you just got to be careful of that though, because a lot of times you get an email back that says, "Yes, I'd love to review it. You just have to pay me $19.95 or whatever, right?"
Yeah.
And like just telling you FYI that like, yes, you'll run into that, but it's still not a bad idea to like make a proper press kit with an actual press release that you put out there with assets that people can use and send it out to a bunch of different companies. Or if your game charges money, you can give it to them for free with some discount code or whatever, depending on the store.
Well, right now the game is free. We're not really in the stage of where we're looking to ask money for it, considering it is mostly just a beta.
Do you think that you'll get to that stage where you want to make money with it? Or
We would like to.
Like, are you going to plan as like, oh, we'll see if we can get this popular, see if we can get people interested in it, and then once we have an audience, that audience can be monetized through one of multiple.
That is what we're
methods.
thinking about.
Microtransactions. You can pay $1 and get a custom background skin, maybe a theme.
Well, ads would work well in the
Ads.
game because you have this gameplay kind of like Words with Friends, where you can play through the whole game, and then afterwards you could get like an interstitial full ad, and that won't necessarily ruin a person's game experience. But you don't need to focus on putting that in now because you don't have the audience right now, so it's not worth your time necessarily to code it all in and deal with that. until
I wouldn't
after
be
you build it out.
against a pay $1 and remove all ads permanently. I've
Yeah,
always,
I
I've
mean,
always kind of
it depends on the thing
seem-
though, because sometimes they don't work out well as an in-app purchase. Because generally you'll get more money off of in-app purchases than you will on ads, right? But the in-app purchase to remove an ad, you're basically telling somebody, "Hey, this is a punishment." So if your ads are a punishment, and you're treating your ads like a punishment in the game, users won't like the ads. If users don't like the ads, they're not going to click them. You're not going to make money with it.
That makes
So
sense.
either they're going to try the game once, try it twice, try it a bunch of times, and if they get really into the game, they've already gotten used to seeing the ads, and it's not a big deal. Or they play the game once, and then they're like, well, I'm not into this with ads, and then they quit. They don't, I'm not going to invest $1 in a game just to try it without ads, right? So,
That's a good point.
It doesn't monetize as well as, say, offering different game modes or different skins or other things that you could do as a microtransaction. May monetize better. But again, like your guys right now is you need to focus on audience and, getting your name out there, word out there. There's one thing to do the whole aspect of building your game. That's what you did the class to find out. But now out of class, you're learning how to actually market yourselves and how to start a company. And that's a lot trickier, right? Or at least it's a completely different skill set that you haven't practiced yet. And, everything takes time to learn, try out different things. So speaking of the audience, like, do you think that this game is mostly for casual players? Or do you try and go for more like traditional gamers, or at least, people who are already in the games, like on Facebook?
It's actually interesting. A lot of the people that we gave the game to test weren't necessarily people who might have been interested in this type of game, and they still found it lots and lots of fun to play. And that was one of their main comments. It's, oh, I usually don't like word games, but your game was really fun, that kind of thing. So
we are aiming for a pretty broad audience with the game. I think naturally casual players would be more drawn to a word game like it, but at the same time, there's an element of sort of arcade action to it, where you're actually fighting to try and keep the tiles from building up. So there are exciting elements to it in that sense that I think draw in people who are more interested in the tactile challenge kind of thing.
One thing that might expand the audience a little bit was something we had discussed originally, but ended up getting cut just for the scope of the project being already rather large, was power-ups and different kind of tiles that weren't necessarily letter tiles, but would do different things.
Yeah,
like
people like that kind of power-up, like changing up the gameplay, different elements of chance. So it's like a slot machine where you never know what kind of power-ups you're going to get.
Yeah, so we got the classic mode where it's just forming words, and then you have a fun mode with cool powers.
So are you guys, like you jokingly mentioned Kickstarter earlier, but like, are you guys looking for a funding source to continue funding this game in the future and its development, or are you just going to do it on your off time?
I wouldn't be against just working on it in my off time, but if we could get the kind of popularity that would warrant a Kickstarter, that would be wonderful, because we could get more hands on the project. We could.
Well, Kickstarter isn't the only way, right? Like, you can get investment money, you could get a loan, you could get sponsorship, or any number of different ways to get the cash you need to, say, hire a freelancer to help you out with, XY marketing thing, or if you need someone to make way more assets that you can't, dump on Rebecca to do, in a week, you could hire a bunch more artists or hire another programmer to finish something up if, you need to go that route. But I don't know if that's something that's interesting to you guys.
I had not thought about that. It was more something like Alex said, working on it in our free time. But yeah, if we could grow the audience a bit, then I would be interested in taking it as far as it could go.
What about contests? Have you guys thought about like submitting to any game festivals or different conventions or other places to show off the game?
I haven't looked into submitting it to anywhere, but just off the top of my head, I'd like to submit it to like IndieCade or something.
Next year, it would be exciting to show it off at GDC if we have new updates to show.
And then also, I'm pretty sure we got nominated for the Sammys, which is our school's kind of like local game award.
I heard bad things about that, though, because I was talking to our professor, and he was saying that due to the number of games that are in the senior game design course this year, there might not be room to have some of the
That's true.
undergraduate stuff in there.
Oh, interesting. There's too many game developers.
There's a lot of the Sammys are just a UCSC thing, so it's mainly to highlight the senior game projects. But in the past, they've also taken the more popular or exceptional games from other courses to show as well. But like Alec was saying, there's so many senior game projects this year that they may not have time because it's a limited time slot and venue.
Yeah, UCSC is a huge school, and there's a lot of people in those game courses. Like, how many people were in your class for this one particular?
For the game practicum that we did the Suddenly Words for,
It's pretty
actually,
small.
it wasn't that big. It was only maybe 30 kids.
30 or so.
Like, 30 is small for most classes.
Yeah.
Like,
As opposed to, say, our 170 senior course, which is like 80 or so.
Yeah,
So
like-
almost triple the number of people.
yeah, it's really hard to be able to even just stand out in a group that size. You know, you just get, it's not the teacher's fault or anything, right? But you obviously get less one-on-one time and less review if there's so many teachers that you have to deal with, TAs and like, how do you guys like the program at UCSC? Do you think that is that an issue that you guys have, or is that not been an issue? You have really awesome TAs. It's working out.
I like it. They
Your
leave a
review.
lot to ourselves. They let us manage ourselves quite a bit. So it's one of those things where you get as much out of it as you put in. If you take it very seriously and you put a lot of effort in, you're going to come out with something more respectable, I would say, than if you just didn't care and you did the bare minimum just to get the game functioning.
Yeah, I've talked with your teachers too, and David's really awesome about knowing every student and knowing what's project they're doing and giving really good advice for each one. Did you guys go to him a bunch with
We talked to
feedback,
him.
or
We
just,
talked to him a bit.
For our 170 class, actually, he meets with us every single team making their own game. He meets every single week with every team.
Oh, that's good.
And
So he's keeping pretty close track on
Yeah.
every team, making sure they're not going off course.
Yep.
and it's more like it's partly getting an update, also getting to know the people on the team, like seeing who does what, and just kind of being there if we need someone to talk to or have questions or that kind of thing.
Also getting a different point of view on the project and any kind of ideas that you currently have. Because, I mean, the design teams tend to talk amongst themselves quite a bit, but they don't necessarily go to other people for design ideas. So having the meetings once a week, you end up getting an idea that you might not have thought of without additional input.
Plus, he is really experienced. As an industry vet, he's given some very good insight into a lot of things.
Yeah. For those who don't know, David Westman is our professor. He worked on games like the X-Wing series and
TIE Fighter.
TIE
TIE
Fighter,
Fighter,
Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay,
Bloodwake.
Death Jr., Bloodwake.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
It was really exciting.
Saints Row, one of them.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
The first Saints Row.
Cool. All right, so imagine I have a time machine. You guys can hop in it. We're going to go about, 4 months ago at this point. We're going to run into you guys, start of the class. You have 30 seconds. What do you say to yourselves?
Don't use physics.
Yes, don't use physics. It's not worth it. Basically look into every bit of software or every way of doing things that you're going to really commit to before you commit to it. It'll save so much time.
What about you guys? Any advice? No?
I think that's pretty much it.
You'd be
Yeah.
keep on?
We're
Also,
pretty-
look into the game engine you're using and make sure it can do everything you want it to do first. Because we actually got pretty far into building things in Construct 2, and then we realized that it wasn't going to work because of the limit on the number of triggers, and we didn't have enough money to buy 4 copies or 2 copies. Or
basically,
whatever.
we decided that it would work for the base gameplay, probably, but if we wanted to have a full game with menus and high score tables and all of this, then probably would be pushing it on the number of triggers that we would be allowed to use.
So when did you switch to Construct 2? How many weeks in? Was this first week stuff or?
2 weeks.
Immediately after talking about the initial game idea, which was pitched as 3D, we talked about it and we're like, we were afraid we wouldn't have enough time, so we wanted to switch to 2D. And we've had somewhat of a bad experience with Game Maker to some degree, so we didn't want to use Game Maker.
Yeah. What was your bad experience with Game Maker? I'm curious.
Just
You can't just diss Game Maker.
I know. Well, I mean,
Look.
looking back at it, honestly, it was more, at least for me, it was more petty in that it was the first thing that I had used, and it was frustrating in a lot of ways because I wasn't as experienced with it. I wouldn't be as against using it now, but there was just sort of this bad taste left
Certainly,
from it.
Unity is the more powerful tool.
Yes.
And it's good to know.
It
Yes.
probably is just from my memories of being frustrated with it, but I feel like Unity is just more intuitive in the way that you set up scenes. Like you drag an object into the scene.
Well,
and
so
apply
have you
scripts to it.
you did 3D modeling before this?
A little bit, yeah. I
Yeah,
took a 3D modeling course.
Exactly. So like a lot of the people I talk to who've never touched like 3D before, they'll actually say the opposite. Like, oh, Unity's great, but it's not intuitive for me because they've never dealt with like rotating an object in 3D space. And so Unity has this really standard, control scheme. You do your QWE to go between scale and rotate really easily. But
When you hold down the right click in WASD, you can fly around
Exactly.
the scene.
I'm actually not a fan of Unity's 3D controls.
No?
I think it's more because I have a lot of experience in Blender, and
Yeah,
the
but you're a
hotkeys in
weird
that
Blender
are,
person.
I am a Blender
Like, you
person.
have to acknowledge that
I
Blender's
do
weird.
acknowledge that, but like navigating in 3D space is so much faster in Blender.
Are you just using Blender because you don't have access to Maya or any of the other tools?
I don't have money or access to Maya or Max.
I think most of
And-
us actually use Blender for those reasons.
Now that I've used it so much, though, I looked into
It does
them
everything. It's a
bit.
really powerful tool.
It's super
just like,
powerful.
It's like GIMP versus Photoshop, right? Like
No, it's not actually. GIMP is terrible.
Yeah.
Blender's like I have not actually personally put in hours in Maya and Max, but from my understanding, in terms of modeling tools, Blender is easily same tier as Maya and Max, maybe higher. From what I've watched, it looks much faster because of a few particular features. The 3D cursor in particular lets you manipulate things with superfine control that I don't know if there's a comparable function in Maya or Max. But then in terms of things like animation and whatnot, I know that Maya's tools are more developed in that sense. I believe on the plugin front, Max is a little bit more developed there. So there's strengths and weaknesses, but
yeah, because there's a lot more
for free,
support in them.
Blender is amazing, and Cycles has been
And it
making
does
leaps and
every
bounds.
aspect too. It even has its own game engine, I think. Inside
Yes, it has
which,
its
like,
game engine,
I don't know
video
anyone who uses
editing
it, but
software, compositor.
It's pretty awesome
It's
software.
amazing.
Package. Especially just it's completely free.
Yeah.
But it's weird to use because it doesn't do everything the same way. It does it its own unique way.
That is true. But
It's mostly
once you
keyboard
come to
shortcuts,
grips
right?
with it, yes. Once
Yeah.
you come to grips with it, though, it's so fast. It's blazingly fast.
Yeah, because it's one of those things that the people developing it are super fast. They're like, well, we're not going to change this. We got these really hot keyboard shortcuts. And then someone new trying to get into it is like just complete brick wall until they get over that.
It's
They're-
really cool
they're
seeing
working
the
on that a little.
videos and like the short movies that they make entirely in Blender.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know, they're just so amazing. It's like Pixar quality.
Oh yeah,
stuff,
I've
but
seen
it's
that.
all
They're-
in Blender.
You can do Pixar quality, high quality stuff in Blender.
Oh, yes.
It is absolutely a professional tool.
Yep.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
And it is catching on a little more, certainly in the indie scene, right? But
Well, yeah, I mean, like it is a huge software package for free, so it's always had a good user base. It's never been, complete margins.
Right.
It's just that the companies like Maya and Max,
They have such an
and-
established pipeline.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
they have the support and they have the plugins because there's money behind them.
Right.
There's a company that's pushing that out there.
Right. And they don't want to train people to shift over
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, and big studios don't fish over because that's just a lot of work to get them trained in this very unique pipeline that what happens if it doesn't get updated, then they have to switch back.
Right. They are trying to work on making it more user friendly. Like certainly between I think it was 2.4 there was a huge shift in terms of the user interface after 2.5, and it's only improved since then. There's still some up until the last update, there were still some bizarrely lacking features, like you could close the program and it would not warn you or anything if you had unsaved work. It would just be,
Oh, wow.
bye, sorry, everything's gone.
Yeah, that seems like a big
Unfortunately, that's
oversight.
not by default though. You have to enable that.
No, I mean, it would close. Now it is enabled by default. In the
Oh, is
past,
it?
you had to enable a thing that would say, are you sure you want to quit?
Yeah.
So the little quirks like that are, so standard, you would think,
Although it does save automatically periodically
That's true.
for backups.
The periodic
Did you
saving
guys
is
have a
good.
course in Blender, or are you guys just doing it on your own?
Yeah, so I've taken a course in modeling and then animation, and then I've done a lot of my own.
And in those courses, you covered Blender specifically.
Yeah, they covered
I took
Blender.
the basic 3D modeling course, and it was all in Blender. I have a notebook at home that has all the hotkeys written down.
And Taryn spent about one night teaching me how to use Blender, and by the next day, we pretty much were making models for the game.
And that's a pretty
Yeah,
big
me too.
testament if you're like, oh, I've never used it before, and after a day, I made all the models.
We
Like,
basically wrote down a list of all the hotkeys, what they did, like the specific methods.
you need one of those T-shirts to have the hotkeys on it, but in reverse. So you just like look down at your chest, like, oh, okay, that one. I've seen them for like the Linux shortcuts they have.
Yeah. Blender needs that.
Yeah, that would be funny. All right, so at this point in the show, I also like to talk about not just games you've been making lately, but what you like to play, because you have to actually play games to be able to know what's out there. If you guys never played Words with Friends before, right, you wouldn't know that lexicon of how mechanics work and how the people understand swapping tiles. People know what's out there because you yourself also play the games and be current with it. So I try to encourage developers to stay active in games, not try and get swamped and say, oh, I don't have time to play anymore. That's a bad answer for a game developer.
Well, we are college students.
Yes, true. So like what have you been playing? Have you not?
I have actually been really into the Reaper of Souls expansion for Diablo 3.
Oh yeah? I haven't played it yet. How is it?
It's actually really good. Much better than the Diablo 3 release.
Yeah, I was gonna say that like I can't complain about Diablo 3, but at the same time I'm not playing it anymore.
Yeah. My only issue with it is the original game, or I say original, but I mean Diablo 2 Lords of Destruction. What I remember from it wasn't so much the monster slaying, although that was a big part of it. It was more of like a dungeon crawler for me. The areas felt more randomized than Diablo 3's areas, which feel very streamlined. Like the area layout is the same. The entrance and exit is generally in like the same area. Like it's only the internal parts and like the tiles that are shifted around. And so because of that and just the direction they're taking the game, it feels more like a hack and slash rather than a dungeon crawler. So,
Yeah.
But it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess they had a different priority when making it. I think they knew that they couldn't replace Diablo 2, so they wanted to make a game that had a different appeal to it, and that made the Diablo 2 fans sad. But
I'm just very happy that
at the
they were
same time,
able to
it brought
bring
a lot of
back-
people who weren't into the game into it, because a lot of WoW players who then became Diablo players. 'Cause
Yeah,
it was
with
more
the
hacky.
subscription deal they did with.
Oh yeah, I mean they also gave them a bunch for free, so that helps. If you committed to play WoW for a year, you got Diablo for free. I think it was. That's just so smart, just so smart.
I'm just happy they brought back the Crusader or the Paladin,
Mm-hmm.
because what's a game slaughtering waves and waves of demons if you don't have a champion of the light?
Yeah, you got to have the holy figure guy. What about you? What have you been playing?
Well, recently, speaking of Diablo 2, I've actually started playing Diablo 2 for the first time.
Oh, nice.
And League, which I've actually never played League either before, so
The
that's...
League of Legends.
Yes.
I like how those two are so different games from such different time periods.
Yep.
You can make a lot of comparisons between the two. There's a lot of Diablo 2 inspiration in League.
Yeah.
But that's mostly because I guess League inspired from Dota, which is from Warcraft, which is also Blizzard.
Oh yeah, I've been
Yeah.
playing
So
a lot
it's
of
just
Dota
like the
2
entire
as well.
conversation is just going to be Blizzard.
Yeah, I also play WoW, so that's not surprising.
There you go.
Big
Does
Blizzard
everyone
fan.
in this room have played WoW at one point? My account isn't active anymore,
Never.
but no, never.
Nope. I'm not an MMO guy.
Fair enough. If you're not an MMO guy, but it's the greatest MMO I've played.
I believe it.
I've played for the 6 or 7 years that it went from the vanilla experience to Cataclysm.
Yeah, I had my I forgot when I got my account, but it was probably like 6 months before release in one of the open betas, and then I stopped for a couple years in college, and I went back, and now I'm stopped again, and I'm probably going to come back for the expansion pack just because I have to check out the content.
I went
for a
back
week.
and looked at some of the changes they're making, and it's so different than what it was when I played before.
Yeah, they're not afraid to completely uproot the game and shift what it's about, and that's what I like, because you come back and it's a fresh experience, and it may be different, it may not be what you had before, but it's fun. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why it still has so many people playing it, like, 10 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always seen it very similar to what League of Legends did.
Mm-hmm.
The game is fun because the gameplay is solid, but it's the accessibility that the game has.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
Which is why I feel like
League is
of
very
Legends-
much like we want anyone to be able to start playing League today and not feel like overwhelmed that they can't.
Yeah.
It's been a huge strength of theirs.
Mhm.
What about you, Ian? What have you been playing?
I've been playing League of Legends and Total War.
Cool.
So
Are you like a long time League player? Or you just started playing like Rebecca?
I've been playing League since pretty much since it started, like what was it, 4 years ago or something?
Oh, I don't remember at this point. Yeah.
Quite a while ago.
Yeah. It's been a while.
And then I've been playing Rome 2, which is kind of like Civ and real-time RTS combined.
So you're a lot more of the strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone who plays Rome 2 is like hardcore strategy Civ guy.
Yep. Although I actually haven't played Civilization yet, but it's on my list.
Oh, yeah, you haven't? I definitely need to pick it up.
I haven't played that many games in the last few months, but just the other day I did buy the pre-release for the revamped Age of Mythology on Steam. That's bar none my favorite
Are you
RTS
also
ever.
a strategy?
Yeah, I'm
gamer?
a strategy guy, but I don't like Civ. It's too slow for me.
What about like other Sid Meier ones, like Colonization?
Haven't played them, but I guess aside from that, I've been sort of salivating thinking about modding Fallout 3 and Skyrim because not making mods, but getting the right mod set up.
Yeah.
I've spent many hours doing that, and I am feeling a hankering to do that again.
I'm going to admit something. I haven't played Skyrim yet. I own it. Even worse.
Oh.
It was given to me as a gift, and like I haven't even put it to disc yet.
It's very fun,
I know
especially
it
with
is.
mods.
We have that in common.
I know for a fact it is amazing and super fun, and I will love it. And I haven't done it yet.
I really like it as someone who usually plays as like a sword and board character because they added the ability to bash enemies with your shield, which is just incredibly fun. Because it's something you can't do in like Oblivion or Morrowind. You just hold your shield up and block stuff. But in Skyrim, you can actually bash things and like interrupt spell casts.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. But Fallout 3 is better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You like it more?
Still waiting on Fallout 4.
The complexity.
Oh, it'll happen.
I
Fallout 3 has been too popular.
hated the way that they dumbed down things for Skyrim, with the as far as stat management goes. Like for me, Oblivion was a little too finicky. I felt too much stat management. But then I think they really hit the sweet spot with Fallout 3 with the combination of these overall important stats and then all of the minor skills that you can still be a really powerful character if you have crappy minor skills in various things. But just it was a dual layered basically as far as the complexity of dealing with the stats go. And then in Skyrim they basically took that away, which is irritating.
That makes sense. I can see why that frustrates you. Makes me feel self-conscious though, because I was going to say, I've been playing Titanfall this week, and that's just total like shoot 'em up game. There's not a whole lot of thinking or strategy that goes into that.
There's a lot of skill though.
It didn't say it doesn't take skill, but it's one of those games that you can't think too much about it. Like Penny Arcade was joking about how like you just request a new Titan every 2 minutes. It's like these $1 million machines that you're just crashing and burning over and over. Story doesn't quite make a whole lot of sense, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. I really liked Mirror's Edge, and I'm not a really big Call of Duty gamer. I'm just haven't really gone into the game, not really into that style of game, but it's kind of brought me into that shootery gameplay mechanics again. With like a bit of that like parkour, Mirror's Edge, running around, and the capture the flag, and it's a right balance that I'm enjoying. Not saying I'm good at it, but I'm enjoying it.
How does Titanfall compare to like PlanetSide 2, for example?
I never played PlanetSide 2. I played PlanetSide 1.
It's probably similar. Like you have jetpacks and you can fly around.
Yeah, it's no, I don't think it's that close. Like, yeah, it's got like a lot of maneuverability stuff. But I think it's a lot more Halo-y, to be honest. Like, it's different companies and all that, but it's very, very deathmatch based. Like, it doesn't even have a single-player campaign. The single-player campaign is just multiplayer. And the way the multiplayer works is different than I've seen other games do it, because you go through this campaign and you have like intro cutscenes, and there's kind of moments happening in the game that are story based that they don't really affect you in game, but you're kind of aware that they're happening. And then, like, say one side wins, the screen doesn't just fade to black and say they win. It's like, okay, now we got to evacuate, and you have to get to the evac ship, and they're like, you've lost, but you're still playing, and you could still get points for getting out of there alive, or you could be killed on your way back.
That's cool.
To the evac.
Interesting.
So, you know, all it is just give you more experience if you live, but it's kind of a nice way to like lose, but then still feel good about losing because you lost, but you were able to get to the ship before it blew up or before someone killed you and another Titan. So that's been pretty fun.
Cool.
Neat.
All right. Well, if you want to find more about the show, you can go to beIndieNow.com. That's where we have past episodes, show notes, cool stuff like that. If you want to find more about me, you can go to my blog, TobiahMarks.com, where I have blog posts that I hope indie developers find interesting, stuff that I find interesting at least. You can follow me on Twitter, @TobiahMarks. Where can we find more about Suddenly Words or you guys?
Suddenly Words is on the Android store and the Windows store. So you just look up
search Suddenly
Words, exclamation mark. And
Yeah, with a space, as discussed earlier.
Indeed, not an underscore.
Yes. What about you guys? Do you have like personal Twitter accounts, blogs, anything you want to plug?
I wish I did at this point.
Not yet.
I do have a forward to my Facebook account at alecreeves.com. That just forwards to my Facebook, though. So
That works. Personal site? No, nothing else to plug?
Nope, not at this time.
I need to start a Twitter, apparently.
Yeah, there you go. Marketing, right? Got in the social medias.
That's true.
All right. Well, again, thank you guys very much for being on the show. And for everyone out there, go out and make some games.